I'm already shocked to find out that you start by writing.
Well,
You have such a visual.
let me modify that. It's not that I sit down with a page. That's actually that's not true. What happens is I'll have an image and I just want to capture it. So it starts with maybe my eyes closed or something. But also a lot of time, music, the feeling of different music will help evoke something from me. It happens in different ways. I mean, we could talk for hours about the different ways you try to coax ideas out of the universe, you know. I even had a period of time where I got a lot of mileage out of like thinking about what I don't like. They could have been so much better, and like seeing if I would then challenge myself. How would I have done it? You know, and it's sort of a reverse, like a trick, you know, like a ninja mind trick. You know, you can't always have like a bolt of lightning from Zeus, you know, just, oh, this is going to be perfect. So sometimes you ease into it, like, well, why did they think that was good enough? You know, like, what would have made that better? And, you know, like, and I think a combination of hoping that you can get, you know, this sort of download kind of image, but sometimes you can circle around a subject, you know, and kind of sneak up on it and coax an idea into existence that way.
Yeah, I actually like. So when you're a stand-up comedian and you find yourself talking to some journalist and they, you know, reliably, they're going to ask you who your inspiration was, and I have the strangest answers because it's never like. You know, if I were to say heroes of mine, it's like a scientist, Robert Sapolsky, a rapper, Aesop Rock, the filmmaker, Christopher Nolan, or something like that. I like do get like inspiration from them. As far as like stand-up comedians, it's not that I don't have people that I really like. And there's like a guy, James Acaster, for example, that of late I've found really inspiring. But when I first got the idea to be a comedian, I just watched, like, you couldn't just pull up stand-up comedy and find whatever stand-up comedy anytime. There wasn't just like a Netflix or whatever else and be like, I want to watch Nate Bargatze or whatever, like right now, that's what I'm in the mood for. It was like whoever was on late night that night, whoever was on, this was, you know.
You couldn't even go to the library, right? They don't have a comedy library back
then. Exactly. And so like, I just watched everything I could get my hands on, and I found that the bad stuff I would learn so much from, because I could figure out like, the cliches, you know. It was like I watched so much that I was like, oh, another joke about this. Ah, that's an idea. I see people keep on making the same exact stupid joke over
we were
in
this sort of downtown cabaret performance, you know, ghetto that we called, you know, just like where you would just be in the corner, dirty, dingy place somewhere. And there was a lot of different people trying to get out of that, you know, like, you know, trying to make it, but it was the sort of the alternative. It wasn't comedy, right? It was sort of performance, you know, art, but we didn't like, we can talk about that later. But what I noticed was that a lot of people, one of the most useful skills you could have was discernment, and to say, you know, that wasn't good enough. And it's all, because especially with art, comedy's great. If they don't laugh, it didn't work.
Yeah.
In art, or, you know, if the audience doesn't respond, you can say, oh, they just didn't get it, you know? And you can sort of dismiss it. And a lot of people were doing that. Like, no. The audience didn't like it, you know? And they're like, well, yeah, but I'm not making it for the audience. So, all right, that's fine. But like we were like vaudevillians, you know? And so very early on, I was like, fuck art. It's so fucking pretentious. I don't want to have to read a goddamn artist statement to understand this thing. And so we were like, you know, we wanted that feedback of whether it was working or not. So that's the other thing, is like looking at other stuff and being like, well, what did you think? I was like, well, you know, here's 10 things that could have been better. Not that I'm just being hypercritical, but I'm trying to learn.
Yeah.
And I'm learning as much from what doesn't work. And then when we would do a show, I would say early days, if we were lucky, if 20% was good.
Yeah.
Because we're just, and even stuff that had promise, we didn't have music to back it up, or we didn't have a crew or anything. So there was a lot of bad stuff, but there was just enough good stuff so that it was like, it wasn't disheartening. But we quickly would like, all right, that was the bad stuff. Let's keep the 20 and try to get it, inch out another 5%, and just slog through getting to the good stuff. And people don't realize, I know I've seen comedians, work out their material, and it takes so long to get the perfect set, but for us, and the reason I'm also glad I never get asked who my influences are in a way, because I'm not in a medium like comedy where, for me, that would be a silly thing to talk about. It would be like asking a painter, like, which colors have influenced you? I'm influenced by so many things. I'm not sure that's the best metaphor, but it's like I'm influenced by everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't have anybody that I look to that's like, oh, here's somebody who put these disparate bedfellows together in the way that I would. I just go like, I like this comedian, I like this musician, I like this designer.
That's the way I feel.
And it's like, I'm not going to be looking within my own medium necessarily for, the thing that I would say, like, this is my hero. It's like, my hero is somebody in any field that just crushed it in a new way and made me feel something, or made me think about something. And I guess one of the things we have in common is, we're doing more than one thing. You're never just doing pure comedy,
Yeah. I sometimes am, and when I am, I'm like, I'm remembering why I don't like this. I loved it at one point, and it just wasn't fulfilling.
Yeah, not that there's anything against that. I was a musician at one time, but I realized that at a certain point that being a pure musician or a pure actor or a pure, just wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't know if this is true for you, but for me, what ended up being my strength started out as just this terrifying sense of like, oh my God, how am I ever going to get a job? I'm so fucked, because I spent my whole college 4 years like just going to all the things I liked and just, like jumping all around. And my advisor at the end of the day, you're just bouncing all over. Like, what are you going to do? And I was like, well, what kind of job combines, an interest in, drumming and acting and storytelling and technology and art and comedy and, and design, like nothing, So I was just like, oh God, I guess I just have to accept that I'm just a master of none, and not even a jack of all trades, just a dude that likes these things. But I was like, but I know I won't be happy picking one. So I just gave in, At first I got a job like in marketing, which, I was on track. I'm good at that. I come up with ideas for marketing stuff, and I could have done that.
Not much better marketing than the Blue Man Group.
But here's the funny story. I got to tell it. Like, so I was like, man, I'm good at this, but but I can't do this. I looking ahead 25 years. I was like, fuck. So I quit and became a cater waiter here in New York. Just another dude, at the Met Museum holding pigs in blankets, with all these other aspiring actors and stuff. Paid pretty well for that kind of work. But what was good about it is you could work for like 3 weeks or a month, and then you could take a week off without losing your job. You just like scheduled each job. It wasn't like a waiter where you're just stuck, right?
Yeah.
So, and I met Phil. Phil worked there too. Matt had a software job, but we would work for like a month, and then we would build a 10-minute show for a week. And then we would go back to work. We were just doing that. But I was convinced that that's where I was going to be for a long time. I really worked hard to make sure I had health insurance there, and like it got in really deep, and also so I could be like the first one called. So we'd get called at like 10 in the morning. We'd be there till 2 at night. We'd like 14 hours and just get as many hours up. And then little by little, by combining these things that were just sort of a hobby and things we liked, this sort of crazy accident at a Blue Man Group happened. But jump cut to like, we moved to Vegas, this and that, and then a couple more years, we're trying to keep it going. And of course, we're doing the ads and the market, and eventually, I'm just the marketing guy at Blue Man Group. I did some other things too, of course.
Yeah.
But I started to spend a lot of time, and I was like, wait a minute, what happened? They've tricked me. I'm back in marketing again.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew it was like, all right, now it's time to get out of here and start over. Just left and like went to my bathroom and just started playing around again, with no idea what would happen with that, no intention for it to happen. And then that sort of became Wink World. But there was a few times at Blue Man where we had some projects that we were trying to like come up with that were non-Blue Man related, but we could produce. But it was sort of like investors and the corporate influence kind of crept in. Like, well, here's the kind of thing that the market would like. Anytime I tried to create a successful project, it didn't go anywhere. The only time I've done anything successful is when I wasn't trying to be. I'm not sure that's good advice to give people, but that's just my truth. Like I just don't make good work when I'm trying to make popular, good, successful work. I make my best work when I'm just trying to amuse myself, or not just amuse myself, but just make work I would like. That's the only.
I'm
not sure that's good advice, but
I know it's tough to say. Like, I was like on the traditional stand-up path, and certainly no one in the industry was like, hey, what if you really like focused on biology? Learned about the evolutionary underpinnings of human nature. Like when I started doing that, they're like, ooh, wish you'd stop doing that. Could you go back to the regular stuff again?
It's so interesting that our culture ultimately reveres innovation, but we don't support it.
Yeah, that's so true.
And our school system, everything, they don't support it at all.
It needs to be so... it needs to be so perfect, and it needs... to get accepted, it needs to be so undeniable that it's like, there's such great innovation out there. Like, I know so many incredible innovators out there that are just like, they're probably just not going to, have this or that picked up or luck come their way. And it's just because, like, the spirit of it.
That's an interesting point. If it's too far out, it might not be able to resonate for people. But what I mean is, so many of the things that become popular are sort of hybrids, cross-pollination of existing things that hadn't been pollinated before. So like, I don't know, a good example of like, Elvis sort of taking like a crooner and, rock, blues music. And I mean, I'm not sure he's the right one to give an example, but like people don't see it coming, but then when it happens, then they're like, wait, this is great. And so, what I meant earlier is like people would say, well, I mean, comedy and biology, it just doesn't mix. But then you do your thing, and it's like, wait, this is awesome, And so, what I'm like, we're not encouraged in school to think that way, and yet it's true. Not every cross-pollination is going to be successful, but if you look at all the things that we really, the innovations that have happened, there's some kind of weird synergy of disparate parts that came together, and somebody saw that vision. Yeah. And we're not taught that, it's not like...
I feel like innovators are going to get no's more, but when they get a yes, there's a huge world ahead of for them because they just don't have...
And you've got to
don't have much competition.
You've got to have the... I mean, like, I still marvel at, like, performing is this one art form that continually humiliates you, and you never are above it. You know what I mean? Like and especially early on, you just have to have this resilience of like a slapstick performer just falling on their face and be able to get up again. I don't know if I could do it. I have resilience on stage when I'm being weird. I can sort of be, at least if I'm failing, I'm in a character. If I was myself with a mic, or, in front of an audience, a failure there might hurt a little more, but I guess you get used to it over time.
Yeah, it's a muscle too. I feel like, I've been a little spoiled where it's because, eventually I carve out a thing and then feel comfortable enough, and then enough time goes by. Like recently I did my first regular stand-up weekend. I've done like some 10-minute spots here and there, mostly just to knock the rust off, or I'll like go to visit a friend, who's performing, and they're like, why don't you get on stage? I'm like, all right, But I haven't done like a full show weekend like obligation. Like I'm the
Right.
headliner there, and
You have to
I
deliver to the
have to
paying
deliver.
customers. Yeah.
And yeah, it was. I was like, yeah, I think I was like, maybe I'll be open to getting back into this. And I like, yeah, this if I were, it's going to be a slog to do it. It's so it's just I don't know. You get away from different mediums for a while, and it takes you just recently what would you call it? Dusted off the
Dusted off the blue
the paint
the blue paint. Yeah.
do you have your last performance or potentially your last?
Well, I don't know if I don't know. I mean, certainly our last chance to perform at the Astor Theater. So,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's closing in February,
And this was the original?
this is the original theater. Yeah, I mean, we did little bits, but this is it.
Amazing.
And so this was 33 years, 1991. We opened down there, and it was, and it's just stayed open. I mean,
Is it bittersweet? Is it kind of exciting to move on?
yeah,
Is it kind
it's
of like a
bittersweet,
range
but
of...
it's kind of exciting to this day would come at some point. I guess part of me though doesn't feel like the people that are running it, it could have lasted longer. I mean,
Yeah.
I was just down there today, and it was a sold out show, and there was like tons of families. I guess the problem is since COVID, there's been some change of patterns and stuff. The
Right.
weekends they're turning people away, but then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, no one's coming out. So I guess that's a weird sort of shift in sort of behavior. And so at a 300-seat theater, you can't increase your capacity on the weekends. If you sell out, you just sell out. And if it doesn't spill into the week, so I don't know. But so it's bittersweet. The bitter is partly because I feel like maybe it could have stayed open, but there's something
and there's it's doing well in other markets.
Exactly. It would be
still.
another thing if it was like the Boomman's gone now. It's around, and I think I want to do the Vegas show at some point because that's a fun. I like the bigness of it. And
I'll fly out and see that. I stayed in New York to see. I'd be in LA right now if it had not been for the fires, but.
And you won't be around Friday.
No, I have to leave on Wednesday. I'll come out to Vegas.
I'm going to do it out there because that's a great. I really like that show, and I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed as much as I enjoyed, the early days when we made this show in this sort of scrappy downtown environment. I also really enjoyed the challenge of like, all right, we're going to a bigger theater. There's going to be people further away. How do we make this big and cool. Still intimate, And so we started playing with shadows and scrims and bigger contraptions, and it was really fun. And I'm surprised at how well it holds up, actually, because that's been 20 years now, 24 years now. I mean, It's changed as we changed casinos and stuff, but that's a show that I really the brief period where we had like a rock tour, like a spoof of a rock tour, really.
Yeah.
The Megastar tour, that was also really fun too.
Well, I was really inspired to, since I was in town and everything. I would have wanted to have you on anyway, but I was deeply inspired because I had you had us over for Christmas. My favorite, probably my favorite Christmas on record, and we were hanging out. Actually, I still have a funny. There was a moment when your dog went to the bathroom all over the floor. It was the most amount of dog poop I've ever seen in my entire life.
Possible.
And it was like,
I think if there was a visiting dog, I think they might have been having a poop competition.
It was
like a one-upsmanship because there's no other explanation for how much poop there was.
I wish we would have taken a pure. I feel
why
so
didn't we
foolish.
take a picture?
It was crazy. And there was you said it's like they were trying to spell something, and that's exactly what it looked. It looked like an alien language.
They tried to communicate through.
Before that, there was a group of us in the steam room, and you were just as I was. Do we need to take a break?
No.
Okay?
It's okay.
Just as I was like starting to get, needing to get out because I was getting too lightheaded, you were on this riff about vaudeville.
All right.
That was blowing my mind, and just the some of your early inspirations and that medium that you studied. And I was like, because I was such a stand-up nerd, and you've seen I've of late started transitioning into doing some multimedia performance and stuff, and someone that's done so much more than that than me. I found it really inspiring because I can tell you the ins and outs of like, stand-up comedy joke structures and evoking different emotions and expectations, and this sliding scale of sensibilities and why different things work in different places and everything. But adding that physical immersive element, I've already, it's opened my mind to the different parts of the medium, and I was actually getting ready for this. I just started watching. Like, this documentary about some vaudeville acts and stuff. It was blowing my mind. It was one because already in this conversation you were talking about just getting like 10 minutes together. Can we just get 10 minutes together? And I was like, because that's how you start as a comedian. When I started, it was all about get that solid 5 minutes to get on late night. Now it's like content. Can you create something somewhat entertaining every single day and like get into this grind, like which I have no interest in doing. But vaudeville was like, hey, this person figured out how to like do this theatric form of sneezing that was like very entertaining. That they would do like this 5 minute sneeze sketch, and that's like they would tour around with the group of people doing this thing, and like that's incredible.
When I discovered vaudeville, or of course I'd heard the word, but I had a similar experience. It kind of blew my mind because it's kind of buried in our culture. We've all heard the word, but it's like it wasn't really documented very well, but at the same time it was this incredible, like it was a national circuit. It was the place that people could hone their craft, and for me it was the answer to how do I do a show without a narrative. How can we piece something together, even though it wasn't literally the same, but it was like it was the inspiration of
And also, I mean, what was there ever any ambition to make like a Blue Man TV show or anything?
We never cracked the code on that. For some reason, maybe somebody else could have figured that out. But for us, especially since we weren't narrative, the bits and all the stuff never really translated that well. It just did. We did. We did 20-second commercials for Intel, and I actually liked them. They're these just physical comedy things, but something that would go for 30 minutes or more, or a movie. We just couldn't figure it out. I mean, and that's okay. Because part of what was great about what we made was that we kind of made our own medium, and the fact that it couldn't be stuck, crammed into TV and film, that's okay,
Yeah, well, I mean, because I think TV was like sort of the end of vaudeville, but had
movies, certainly,
or movies,
talkies,
movies,
all of it. The film industry, really, the movies went into vaudeville houses. They already existed, and they just now it's much cheaper, and
it was originally it looked like it was like a lot of like vaudeville acts would be like in a movie to start, or like
that's what happened with the Marx Brothers,
but you can you can see, like, I think that was probably back then, everyone just thought, well, you can see it on the screen now, and the screen's so exciting that we don't need to see the lot. It was just like, it was just kind of bad timing, because had film already existed, had movies already existed, and then vaudeville started, I think there would have been like more of a place for it. But because of course there's like, who does it? All sorts of people want to go to see like Broadway plays and
Yeah, I mean,
things.
we see it enduring, but it's still, I think people assume so much is lost from the leap from live. It's also the danger. I mean, you think about, for a while there would be this pie in the face thing on TV, and it's just not funny, but it was probably funny live. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if someone actually had a pie and you're like in the third row and you're like, and they just shoved it in somebody's face and like it got on the audience a little bit. There's that danger, and you could really, but you take that physicality and the out of it, and then you just put it on film. It's just sort of stupid.
That was another part of the conversation that I was fascinated by, was that I had never kind of thought about with stand-up, but it does it, is the status play and the role reversal, and what an important this show was launched on January 14th because I found it was originally going to be a show about animal studies, and in doing some deep dives, I found a forgotten holiday that was a celebration of the donkeys in the Bible, called the Feast of the Ass. And so I'm really trying to resurrect it. But in looking into it, there was like this Feast of the Fools and stuff. And I had done on my old show, Mind Under Matter, we would do some holiday episodes where I'd do like a deep dive into some of the kind of evolution of, winter solstice celebrations,
Right.
and what, things get detached. Now you think of Halloween and you think of like, well, this is some fun way for kids to get candy and stuff. Back then it was like, death is coming to us. Winter is coming. Death is around the corner. This is like a way of playing with that, and like spring, Easter, the same thing. Okay, there's life again, and but within these, particularly within these winter solstice holidays, I noticed this trend of, I think when things were the worst, probably there was the difference in class and difference in status was probably felt the worst during winter, when food is more scarce and everything's colder and harder, just generally. And there was a lot of this like status play of like there'd be like gender role reversals, cross-dressing. There'd be like slaves would pretend to be masters for a while, and masters would be the slaves, like the higher ups and the lower ups, or the lower run of the church would switch gear. Like during the Feast of the Ass, there would be this ass bishop, and they had the pun at the time. It wasn't lost on them, and so it was like a way of like revering the religion, but like also doing this playful examination of it, and they so there would be like this like ass bishop, where like this person would they would march a donkey through town to celebrate like baby Jesus getting away from danger on a donkey or whatever, something in the Bible, right? But then they'd bring it into the church, and they bring a donkey into church, and then this person would pretend to be a bishop and give like a fake sermon while everyone was going like, and it was like a way of like, this was the governing body, this was the authority and everything else, and it was a way of like blowing off steam and letting the working class express themselves.
It's kind of punk rock in a way.
Yeah, very much so. And it reminds, because you were talking about when we were in the steam room, I remembered the pie thing.
Yeah,
Specifically
about, right, because that would kind of blow. It was another mind blowing experience. Was when I was reading the historic context of it. All of these working class vaudevillian shows were filled with people who just were really resentful of the upper class, and every show pretty much would have a dandy, upper class person who would get, a pie in the face, or somebody would make fun of them, and we see it without that context now. It doesn't seem very funny. It's like, why, what's so funny about that? But like for them, it was like, oh, the powers that be, the man, is coming in, and we're just pummeling them from all sides and making fun of them, and now we're, for this moment in time, reversing, we're have the upper hand,
right?
And then I similarly read in the book by John Stone, Impro, his analysis of improvisational acting and writing is that good theater, whether it be Shakespeare or anything else, is there's constantly micro adjustments of status that two opposing worldviews or agendas are clashing in a piece of dialogue. And in that dialogue, the status, if you will, is changing. Or like a courtroom scene, and like where one point, the status of that argument goes up and then it gets countered. And so, the point there is that, these conversations or these tableaus or scenes that we put up there are not really real life. They're constructed to look like real life, but they're actually carefully, manipulated social flip-flops of status, that are going on if you really analyze it. Sometimes very subtly, and sometimes it's a pie in the face to the, or just a fall from grace or whatever. But I just thought that was, so we took that idea. Yeah. And that's how you got, like, at first we would come out blue and we'd be three blue people, all the same. I would do this, you do this, you do this. And then we started taking that idea of like, well, wait a minute, what if the status within the three of us kind of flipped around from time to time? And we would, like we're doing this, and then Matt would maybe like do something that wasn't the same as us, and the audience quickly understands the rules. We're sort of supposed to do the same thing. And they can also tell by our surprise that we weren't expecting that. Now you got two guys surprised, and then now there's a moment. And Matt, we would be like, we're sort of looking at him scoldingly, and he would be like, no, I did it right. And then the status is flipped twice just in the 2 seconds.
Going from, hey, what are you doing?
And then he's like, this is what we do. This is the way we really. He's like, that's not a drumstick. I've got a mallet this big, and then and so that helped us make it so that we weren't just looking at automatons that were, the same, it was sort of like, okay. And then actually, we were never interested in aliens or this and that. We were interested in human behavior and how could we explore that without language? And so that was sort of what it was. We're sort of like, we're different, but we're a tribe, and the audience is trying to kind of reverse engineer the rules of our tribe based on our behavior, Yeah. And we talked a lot about what we would do and how, and it's not like there's three distinct characters. It moves around, but there sometimes, even the fact that often I would be in the middle, that affected my character because I'm trying to keep the tribe together, and Phil would often be a front runner, explore something. Matt would hang back and sort of see how he could fuck with it a little bit, and then, so we would always think in those ways. We often also we trained ourselves to never, we kind of had this imaginary triangle thread that connected us. We were never unaware of what the other two were doing, or for very long. And actually, if we did become unaware of them, we would do something, and an accident would happen, something bad would happen, or we would suddenly get jarred back into it. So there was this sort of imaginary string, that was connecting the three of us, which we thought that would be kind of subversive. Like how subversive would it be to create a character that's sort of part of a group in a culture that is all about individuality and narcissistic me, and like, I'm the star. This is the name of my character.
Right.
Even the Three Stooges had the different names. Our character doesn't have. Our character is like an organism. It's like a swarm of bees. And we thought that would really be like confusing for people. Like, well, why aren't they trying to, stand out? Why don't they have a name? Or, why can't I get a T-shirt with that one's name? And so that was like a social experiment.
So funny. Like no one does. I saw Blue Man Group with my family, 15 years ago or something. It was so incredibly memorable. One of the finer live entertainment I've done with the whole family, absolutely so hard for
multiple
just going out
to find something
to go to a movie. It's either
somebody's
me and my brother are just being nice by being there, or my mom's just being nice and humoring us, and whatever, and to have everyone, but I'm now realizing no one walked out of it going, "Hey, which one was your favorite?" Like that would be such an insane. Who was your favorite character in it? That's so interesting.
Yeah, and we even mixed it up a little bit. So like, I'm not always in the middle. You know what I mean? So you kind of don't want, and then now then the other characters coming and going in it, but yeah, that was some part of the exercise. And so again, there was a couple of things that were part of its success, but there were also built-in limitations. Like, I think the live interactive quality of it made it so that it never really translated to film and TV.
Yeah.
And I think the subjugating the ego into the collective, on some level, kept it from being something where people could like fanboy over, here's my, the character in the middle doll, and but that's okay too, because who cares about that really?
I mean, I guess when I was saying that earlier, it's just that it was more of like, I think that there's just something so much different and special, and I think people are realizing it more and more as there's a whole vernacular of like young people's like terminology of things. They're like new every generation has their language, and they're inventing their own words. This generation's is called brain rot, and they call it brain rot, and it's like, it's literally because it's self-aware that they're all just like so stuck inside of their phones, so glued to the TVs and the video games, and it is going to be like mind-blowing to people that they can actually go and like see. It's like this TV sort of thing, but in real life, not that they don't know, but it's like, it's to have that visceral experience, and to have a performance that can really only be done and appreciated in that way, I think is pretty special. I mean, stand-up comedy is a lot. You can watch a stand-up comedy special on TV and share it with your friends and everything, and that's great, and that's maybe how. But that's like, how you should decide. Now I want to go and see that person live, because that energy of that live experience is like really what it's all about. And
I hope people that watch Netflix comedy shows realize that going to a comedy club is really good. Is better.
I hope so. I mean, Vaudeville, in like the little bit of thing that I saw, it seemed like it was like, people were just starting to get enough like free time and expendable income to go out and spend a little bit of money on. And
they weren't very expensive, really. That was it. That somehow or other they were affordable compared to now. Even Also, I heard that they had like weird show times, like lunchtime in the day and stuff.
Oh yeah, see, it seems like they were doing them like multiple times a day. It'd be, but when didn't you tell me once, like when you started Blue Man, you guys were doing it like how many 8 times a week or something like that?
Yeah.
Each show.
I mean, that's standard for Broadway. I mean,
Yeah, I suppose
you do two. You do two on Sunday or Saturday. You do matinee, and then you get Monday off. But then by then you're just like, those doubles were killer. But
yeah.
But
wow.
Actually, it's one thing that's interesting about this show here at New York that ran from '91 to now is that when we opened down there, we had this piece where we would each hold a pile of posters, or we'd put them on a big poster, and the poster would say, pick one poster. You only have 10 seconds per round, and then there would be this boop, and we each have a poster, and then there would be all these statistics that we'd gotten from whatever book. The amount of information that the average person today sees in one New York Times exceeds what a person in whatever would see in a lifetime or whatever.
Yeah.
So we had all these data statistics about information overload, and then the other posters would be like cracking jokes, like, "Oh, you picked the wrong poster. This poster's stupid. You can tell the other one's probably better, but it's too late." And then
Yeah.
So we just were all over the place, like statistics and jokes, and it was kind of like. But what it was really about was like, it's coming, man. If you're not on the internet yet, but you kind of know about it now, it's the early '90s, and like it's only going to get more and more and more, and like what's going to happen to us? Like we don't know, and we're not even saying it's bad. We're just saying like it's fucking weird, right? It's fucking weird that there's just information just coming at us before, and like you're missing stuff. There's more than you can get, and a lot of it's junk. And like I look back and like, yeah. That's kind of like why maybe, I've never done social media, this whole time. I'm just like, wow. I don't know. I just had an instinct, I just don't know. I don't want to, and it's tough. Like for times I just felt like out of it. Like I'm the old fogey, but now it's like, it's kind of become cool again,
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm going to never do, but like, I don't watch TikTok, and I don't have Facebook, and I don't, and,
I just deleted all the apps from my phone like 5 days ago. I was already down to one, but one was enough to be distracting enough and like consuming enough, and
it's I don't think I want to get into a debate over is technology good or bad? Is social media good or bad? But there's definitely something. I guess the feeling we were hoping the audience would get is by the end of the show, first of all, they feel like they kind of, got to know the Blue Man. It's like we've tried to flip the script on them. Like you came and you think we're here to entertain you, but like, no, we're like two tribes trying to get to know each other. But also when we do these little satirical things about our culture, it's sort of like, look at how alien we've become compared to our hunter-gatherer past. This is why all the music is drumming. A lot of people first go, "Oh, you're going to have like weird, like robotic music to go with this stuff? Like you're from space, right?" I went, "No, we're from deep inside our ancestral past, and the humans don't recognize us anymore. Wow. They don't recognize themselves."
That's so beautiful, because it is a good examination of this alien anthropologist type of idea of like what would I think one of the most beneficial things that we can remind ourselves of when examining our own thoughts and behaviors and attitudes is like, if some alien came down, or if some past ancestor got in a time machine and saw like our behavior now, like what would they make of it? Like it just seems, no matter what reality you're born into, it just seems like the natural state of being to you, and it's so like helpful to take on that point of view.
And you see, if we'd come out dressed as cave people, it wouldn't have worked, because it'd be like, oh, we're the cave people. We're like, because that doesn't quite work, because they didn't know anything really. So if it's sort of mash it together, like these are sort of smart beings, they can pick up stuff. So that was sort of the deflection. But why are they playing drums all the time? You know what I mean? Like, and also, why do they seem to understand everything? And why? So it was like this thing of like kind of hiding that sort of, this is you. And every time people for all this time would ask me, why blue? And I was like, it's such an annoying question that people ask over and over again. And so I had this game where I'd answer it different every time.
Like the Joker and
just make stuff up.
like Heath Ledger's Joker.
Yeah, exactly. Just make it up and just or I'd ask them like, well, what do you think? Is there a better color? Or, like this, but like, and there are things about it that we thought of after the fact, Like if we were green, that would have, we're Martians. If we're red, it's like, well, then you're the devil. Like, some of the colors were taken, by certain brands, if you will.
Right.
But, and it really was sort of an instinctive choice. But if I was going to give the best answer I could give is, because it's the color of the earth, because that's where they're from.
Yeah. Interesting.
And we did love Yves Klein, and he was, and James Turrell, and they thought that the blue was a mystical color that helped you leap into the void and all that stuff. But we kind of learned about that after the fact, and say, all right, that's good. That was the thing. It's like, and that's true of all the tropes, the alien movies and the outsider and the werewolves and it's still about humanity.
Right.
You're getting this extreme character as a way to examine certain parts of it. And that's why, like, I feel like sometimes you just get an action movie about, Marvel action characters, and it's like, they've gotten better and stuff, but it's sort of like, those kind of characters in literature were profound ways of looking at stuff.
Yeah.
They weren't just like a good sort of franchise that you could build around a sort of,
Right.
So.
Well, so I've been to the Vegas Wink World like 5 times or something like that. I haven't been to the Mall of America one yet, but there's definitely for all of the slinkies and neon and alien-ish kind of maybe trippiness of everything. So much of that show was like very, a contemplation on reality, on physics, on the state of existence.
I mean, that's, like you, I like science. Unlike you, I'm a real layman with it. Like I never.
So am I. Okay. But it's, we're actually very similar in that we just love interdisciplinary stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm like I like to tell people I like to get to be like a C+, B- student of something, and then I'm on to the next thing. I'm starting over. I don't want to be an A+ at anything.
And I tried. There would be some courses in college where they would just get so technical. Like, no, but where's the storytelling part? Where's the metaphoric value? I don't want to go into the the molecule stuff. Like let's talk about quantum physics. But I'm only going to be here for a little while, so I'm not going to try to become a professor.
Right.
But I do find some of these things fun just because they tickle the brain. It's the way art does or comedy. So at Wink World we try to have a little bit of that in there. Not everyone cares, but like infinity. I mean, I'm at this age I'm at now. Contemplating infinity is just as mind-blowing as it was when I was a little kid. It's just like, what the fuck, We get jaded on it, like, oh yeah, infinity, whatever. But if you just take a couple of seconds and play with it, it's like, I can't wrap my head around that. Like, and that's a fun feeling for me. And so I thought, playing with some of those ideas. You know?
There's your TV show, the Gray Man Group. These all that are still just like, it's still fucking weird. It's endlessly fast. We're still sitting here contemplating this existence and human nature, and like we've got for every answer we've gotten, 20 more have opened up. And
you read an article last week, like, well, they kind of have a new idea about what dark matter is, and I'm like, what the fuck are they talking about? That's as crazy as any fiction I've ever heard of. So I like to put those together, and it's not like I'm trying to teach people at a point of view or everything, but it's sort of this place where you stop. I guess what I liked about Infinity is that, like, when you can get to the moment when you realize that your brain just isn't gonna get there. And I think that's another thing that Daniel was talking about. Like, we're not gonna be able to, we use it so much and we're like, we're gonna be rational all the time. But then if you can sort of get to a point where you're like, it only gets you so far, and maybe like turn it off for a second and just sort of like look at the sky and with wonder and marvel, without even a sense that everything. It's sort of like a sense of beginner's mind or whatever. I think that's a great thing that art can do. And I think good science does it too. Like a good professor of science would sort of, present it in that way, or films that cover those things. But it all leads to this sort of like, wow, this is crazy, and people can get very jaded very quickly, especially here in New York. There's so much stimulation, and you get this sort of cultural glaucoma just to protect yourself from going crazy, But but sometimes the baby that gets thrown out with the bathwater is like the wonder and the ability to be blown away by the miraculousness of a rose petal or something.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is. It seems essential to the show to have some sort of a through line, because what it is kind of this like science inspired influence, but more broadly, it's this philosophical examination of the infinite that we find ourselves in through the use of like it's like an odd mix of, because it's like it's very it's very like futuristic with also, but like futuristic with like slinkies and household that are like it's kind of like the alien caveman thing. It's like also, old and new at the same.
I've always liked that expression, from the sublime to the ridiculous. I always try to make sure I'm shooting for both. Sometimes at the same time, or maybe not at the exact same moment, because a sublime moment, but like the ridiculous keeps the sublime from being too like ostentatious or pretentious, and the sublime keeps the ridiculous or the comic, from just being superficial and like surface oriented. But
otherwise it's just like, what I'm saying is, otherwise it's like, it's like a cool like light show, and it's like awesome that you're able to do that. And also the story is like, that's like a cool story to like hear, like a little philosophical spiel, but like combining those things together.
For me, the perfect
really
show for me would be a show that had like this triangle of parts that was like maybe equal parts. It would be like funny, moving, and like informative scientifically, and on some level, like tickling your brain. If you could, those three things, I always try to get all those. Maybe not in equal parts, but I feel like they keep each other honest somehow. I wouldn't want to do all like a science show all the way through. But the other thing that we have in common, obviously, I guess we haven't talked about it yet, is this sort of psychedelic influence. Although I'm not sure it's an influence, but there's the psychedelic for Wink World and your psychedelic topic shows are like taking that on. And I think one of the things that, and it's in very different ways, but I had this idea that, I wonder if I could explore some of the psychedelic tropes or themes from the psychedelic Renaissance without even really talking about psychedelics or the chemicals or the medicines, because the the themes that I think we'd all agree have emerged now as the top 6 or 7 in that little, since the Malcolm Pollan book would be like, ego dissolution, connectivity, the mycelium metaphor of we're all connected to everything else, that connectivity, thing, and then, sort of mystery, or, like the possibility that there's shit that we don't understand, and then we got to throw love in there. Good old fashioned love seems to keep bubbling up as a thing that people like and is good. And so none of what I just described requires having us take medicine or psychedelics in order to think about it or explore it.
Yeah,
you might, and so. I thought I would provide some visuals that might have a DMT-like quality, but then also just offer some thoughts, or like just the last song in Wink World is just about love, and it's just a room that makes you hopefully feel, a sense of like how beauty and how great it is to be alive, and also how great it is to have your heart open and to not only think from your brain, but think from your body and think from your heart. And again, those are many things that I have benefited from by doing various ceremonies of sorts. But you don't have to do those to be thinking about them or talking about them. So
yeah, and I think for me is just like going back to the altering of perception and showing a different way of looking at things, like the aesthetics that you're fond of are a stark contrast from an everyday experience. Certainly, what our hunter gatherers would have experienced, and it is like I find that it's such an important reminder to think like, we don't, like, humans don't see UV light, like these bluish like Monet actually he had some cataract surgery and was able to see UV light and expressed it in some of his work, but they now add like a UV filter in, like when they do that and now but like other animals and there seems to be like no downside to seeing UV. It was just some sort of trade-off in seeing seeing more precisely. So other things like eagles and such have lost their UV.
Right, you can sort of tell when you go into a James Turrell exhibit, like things become fuzzy.
Yes.
As you get closer to the UV, you're not actually in UV, you're just before it. Or what we call black light are these strips. They're like, I don't forget the nanometers or whatever. It's 380 or 390. But when you see that, it kind of blurs your vision.
But it's endlessly, because you go like, hey, we see all these colors. Like, name the colors that we see, and people are like, "Oh, that's easy, Roy G. Biv or whatever." It's like, well, there's actually more color. Like it might, even if you intellectually know that, it's hard to remind yourself, like, oh, there is just lots more to perceive, and what we do perceive is
it's narrowed for all. I mean, maybe the only reason we see color is so that we'll pick berries, right?
Yeah,
it's possible, right?
Or
maybe the color, but seeing blood come out of our arm would be important.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But like
strong speculation that our tree-dwelling ancestors that had got a lot of advantages when
dogs apparently don't have as much because they're using their nose.
So you need a lot more of a visual system if you're grabbing onto branches and such and looking for bears.
I saw one of these things way back, and I don't know if this is even real or whatever, but it was sort of this show about like, here's what the world looks like from a dog's point of view. It was a steady cam, and it was like, washed out, and it goes, because of their nose olfactory area, they don't need as much color, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, just like we're talking about. And that was like, all right, that's kind of good. But then they go, and now what about a frog? And this is what I remember from it. Here's a frog walking along, and there's like grass and stuff, and all this stuff. And then this is what happens when the frog sits still. He stops, and everything that's not moving disappears. And they say, when a frog is still, the only thing he needs to know is where's the mosquito and where's the predator, and also like where's the blowing stick that's going to hit him or whatever. But everything else that's still is irrelevant to his survival.
That out of there.
And so they would show like he would get still and everything would disappear except for this fly or maybe a cat in the background, and then when he would walk, of course, now everything comes back because he's moving. He needs to see it because he's changing where he is. He's navigating through it. Right. Then he's just still, and it all goes away, and it's just.
Yeah.
And I was like, whether that's true or not, it's a beautiful metaphor
it
for
really is.
reminding us that we're not actually. One way you could look at it is we don't have all these senses that open us to the world. We actually have been narrowed. We're narrow casting machines that focuses on what's supposedly important to a hunter-gatherer, back then. And here we are with that set of evolved traits roaming around this crazy world that we've, randomly created. And now people can manipulate that, like peanut M&Ms and gummies that are like bright colors that we're like, those look good. And, and they're not good, and that's just one example, but the idea that, God, there's just so much more on the spectrum, literally. And that's a great example of science and art and spirituality kind of working together to kind of blow your mind and just remind you to kind of open it up a little bit. And and I think that's what we share. Like I'm just as likely to find something exciting from a scientific metaphor as I would be from some sort of story or something, from the art world, or maybe more likely. But the only problem is it has to be something I can understand. A lot of science is really hard to follow.
Yeah, I'm able to do a better job of turning science into comedy now, 12 years into it, because I have more of a mastery and comfort over the subjects, where it's like when you're first learning, it's like you don't have enough comfort level to get into that flow state, that play state with it and fool around a little bit. But speaking of things that are just kind of easy to make entertaining, just like when you notice vaudeville or like a comedian, they could have told that joke better or whatever. Science to me is a gold mine of that's so good. That's such a rich premise told so poorly. There's endless opportunity in my opinion. So,
but I'm curious though, how are you using the vaudeville information that you looked at in your work?
Looked at it today. I just looked at it a little bit today, gearing up for this. But it's something that I have a friend. I have a friend, Nick Zano, who's a writer at the Boston Globe and writes for local comedy scene there and everything. And he's maybe I think I'm allowed to say this. He's working on a book about vaudeville right now. Probably dig into that, and I'm sure because he's so interested in comedy as an art form.
It's so strange in our culture that, for example, comedy is not a category for the Oscars, and yet it's contributed from the very beginning. From Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, all the way through Jim Carrey, and it's
now
looked
has
down
political influence and everything else.
It's mind-boggling to me, and also, Buster Keaton, of course, has this sort of cult following in, the people that are interested in physical comedy. I mean, the commitment and the way he would throw his body at stuff, and you see some of these slow motion pratfalls that he did, and they didn't have stunts back then, or that famous thing of the building falling down and he's in the window and it doesn't hit him. They really did that. That was before there were laws and unions and OSHA and things that
unbelievable.
And you watch that now, and this is the thing: the kids today, or us today, our culture. How do you blow their minds? That would have blown people's minds. Now you just, it was CGI probably, whatever. It could be. And then another thing too, we talked about this too, like we were trying to recreate, all right, if we're going to try to do vaudeville, we can't do it the way they did it 100 years ago, because back then you could bring out an elephant, or a circus, the same thing. You bring out an elephant and people are like, wow, the fuck is that?
Yeah.
I've only seen drawings of that.
Yeah.
But it didn't seem like it was real.
Yeah.
What? That's what is that? And they're not going to ever, we travel around, but we see everything. And so nothing surprises us anymore. So it's very hard to do that with just, okay, I'm going to show you something new, because there's nothing new to anyone. Yeah. So now it's like, all right, I'm going to present this in a different way, or I'm going to make you have an expectation that we're going this way, and then we're going to go that way. And that's what, punchlines and theater have in common, is the unexpected twist. And that's so important, just to get that, just to wake people the fuck up.
Yeah, I mean, I think for better or worse, it's ultimately just the live performance is just so powerful. Going to see live music or whatever is just a very different experience, and than it's great. Like I love being able to pull up whatever song in the world I'm in the mood for hearing at any point, anytime through the day, but it does not compete with the live experience in a lot of ways. So if people want to wrap up, if people want to have, if people want to be manipulated by your art into having a perception expanding a live experience, where would you
I mean,
people?
right now they can see Blue Man, but also Wink World. I think you're going to the Vegas show is probably, or Mall of America, but the Vegas one is also at Area 15, which has other things that I think are pretty cool, and has Meow Wolf. And I will say that one of the things I made a choice about when I was doing immersive entertainment, like Meow Wolf, there's a lot of these places where people go and they take pictures of themselves. Museum of Ice Cream. I'm standing in front of a giant ice cream cone. I'm over here. And I consciously was like, I think...
And now you and I have to get a picture with one another in front of a giant ice cream. I'm just realizing the trouble that you've made for our lives, because now it's like, well, that's a Chris and Shane bucket. We're gonna have to track.
We're gonna have to do it. I mean, it was cool when Klaus Oldenburg made the big, cherry spoon up in Minneapolis, 50 years ago. And I was like oversized. But now you just see it like, I don't know what is the point?
Yeah.
But so A, I don't want to just have a place where you go take a picture. And B, I think agency is overrated. Like, let them just roam wherever they want. I'm like, no, sit the fuck down. I'm going to take you through the first room. I'm going to close the doors, and we'll let the experts do the fucking show.
Yeah,
I know that sounds a little, but for me, it's like, we can pack more surprises in there. And if you're just roaming around, it's a different experience. But I personally, have gone through great lengths to take away agency. And people don't really realize that when they're going through, but just go through there. And then the doors goes, now we've got you, at least for the next 3 minutes. And I do like that also about live experiences. Like, you're kind of trapped for a second, and that being a little scared is not bad. We actually had better shows before people knew about Blue Man, and that they knew that it would be funny or harm. Like when we would come out early on, and we even had less funny pieces. We would just come out and we would purposely scare the shit out of people for a little while. Like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? Or like, even scare them like, this is going to be bad. Or like, why are they looking at me like that? Or like, why do I have a poncho on? Like, and we would not let them off the hook. And we've talked about this. We would then work our way through some stuff and go as long as we could. And then finally we would do some slapstick where the paint hits the guy's face. Now, the funny thing about it is there's actually nothing funny about paint getting into a guy's face. It's not that funny. It's not funny. You say, boom, oh, he's got paint. But in that context, they're not actually laughing at something funny. They're laughing.
They're given an opportunity to release.
That they were scared, and now they realize that it's not necessarily going to be a scary thing.
Yeah.
And so we realized that like a lot of the craft of the show was all right, but now we have to get back to being them a little scared again. Otherwise, we're just doing a bunch of not so funny bits. But they're funny when you're scared shitless.
What's it? I was wrapping up, but
I know. Sorry,
no. Don't be sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. We'll have a sorry off. I'm just now coming up with so many more questions. Maybe just this. Like, what's the first step? Because I remember in the past you've told me about like, what a pain all of the makeup, like there's sweat getting in your ears and stuff and all of these things and figuring out different ways of going about. But what was it like the first time that you like step out and like, hey, we'll get dressed up like these 3 blue people and do this drum thing? And
we didn't even do anything. We would just, we just would get blue and wear black clothes, and put the blue gloves on, and we would just walk around or go to a bar or something. And it was really thrilling.
Wait, you just went to a bar?
We were just, we did one thing. We had a funeral for the 80s, was sort of a happening. But then after that, we would just, let's just go out. And
you would just get comfortable.
And we wouldn't be like, oh, here we are to entertain you. And what we liked about it was, it really, people reacted very differently, but it was sort of like, they're like, wait, what's going on? And here's the thing, if it had been one person, it would have been, or if it was Halloween, it would have been like, who's the weirdo? Because it was 3 of us.
It's so intentional.
People like, wait, what's going on? And then I remember we early on we got a Lortel award or whatever. We were there, and Lawrence Fishburne was there because he did a lot of theater back then. And it's like, hey, wait, are you guys a band? Like, what are you guys? It's like, just because we were in, and say, what is this? We were sort of telling, no, we're just Blue Man Group. He's like, I like it. like he just, but it was something very subversive.
Wow.
Like I said earlier about the uniformity of it. And also about not having an act. Like we're just here, and we don't even know why exactly. So we're here not with identities and without an agenda.
Yeah.
And it would kind of make people's heads explode. Some people would just like, I don't know what that is. I don't want it. You have the ignorers, and then you have and then you have the other people like, I don't understand. You're not performing. You're not. What is this? What is this? And it was really interesting to see that you could be kind of like aggressively subversive, almost doing nothing. It was sort of like Bartleby the Scrivener, like just preferring not to act.
Wow.
And it was sort of somehow it was like the space-time continuum that we all base our lives on, and why we get up and try to work, was just sort of like and we knew that wouldn't be enough. We couldn't just walk around like this. But it started with that, and seeing how little we could end up doing. If we could sort of, could we eventually not talk at all? And how would we get through? We had to talk a little bit because people would be like, why are you coming in here? We even went into the MoMA. They're like, I don't think you can come in here. Like, what? They didn't know what to do. Like, are you allowed to go? Why? What is your intention? Are you gonna put your head on the paintings? The cop was like, do I let them in? We actually got in, but they had a guard following us around. But it was like, people would just be like,
because what if you guys did something?
What did we do in this situation? Like, it's not in their handbook.
Like, what if you stole something and ran off, and then now the guard has to answer for that? I just didn't.
I didn't think about it.
I thought it was fine.
Yeah. I'm not sure I would have let us in. They're supposed to protect that art. And you have all these.
Well, it is. It's like they say about ladders or whatever, where if you just if you have like, you know, if 3 people are like carrying a ladder, you can like walk in
Almost
anywhere. You know, you can just like go into like a movie theater or whatever. Like no one asks to see your ticket or anything. You can just go in anywhere. I feel like that's you can blow yourself. Is that was that what Arrested Development?
Yeah, that's what Funk, Tobias Funk.
What did you think of? Did you?
Oh, that was fun.
I mean, it's one of my favorite shows of all time.
You know, it was funny because they came to us and they said, "Yeah, we want to do this, and can you give us some of the stuff because we have this character that likes." So we were like, "Yes, but he can't do a good job."
Oh, that's so funny.
And they're like, "Oh no, don't worry.
Don't worry about that." That's so funny.